Well, the clock may be counting down to the big day, and as a tussle for who occupies Aso Rock continues, ceding any ground is completely out of the question for the parties involved. The rescheduling of the elections notwithstanding, politicians hang on to their viewpoint almost at any point. Who will blink first, or will any blink at all? Good evening. Welcome to Nigeria 2015. I'm Chamberlain Oso. Now, while political maneuverings, horse trading go on, albeit in camera, preparations for the elections continue. All issues about permanent voter cards, security, even the legality of it all just won't go away. The electorate, the beautiful bride, they watch with keen interest as it unfolds, and in some cases, they end up on the wrong end. Well, our correspondents will report tonight from their location, telling us what is going on where they are.
I'm Emmanuel Ire, reporting from Port Harcourt, the River State capital.
Well, we'll bring you some more as time goes on. But is the social media still buzzing? Our web team provides several platforms for you to air your views on the program today. Remember, you can tweet at us using the hashtag Nigeria 2015. Or please use the handle you see on your screen. It could be at Channels TV and or at Chamberlain Oso. If you have any comments or questions, do send us an email, and that will be at nigeria2015@channelstv.com. Tonight, Alhaji Lai Mohammed, the National Publicity Secretary of the APC. And from our Abuja Center, Olisa Metu, the National Publicity Secretary of the PDP. Well, the Senate today hosted the chairman of the Independent National Electoral Commission, Professor Attahiru Jega, and for over 5 hours, they sought clarification from him on the preparedness of the commission. They questioned him about the internally displaced persons, the use of the card readers, distribution of the permanent voter cards, even the temporary voter cards, as well as the legality of it all. Were they convinced? I guess we'll find out in the days ahead. But earlier, the commission, as though they were preempting that meeting, released an updated version of the distribution of the permanent voter cards. Let's take you through some of the graphic representation of those figures which the commission released before the time. They went on to tell us, reminding us rather, that 68,833,476 people is the total number of registered voters we have in the country. But out of those, 67, I beg your pardon, happen to be those who have collected their permanent voter cards, those who can vote if the elections were to hold now. But there's an outstanding figure. 16 million of those, the commission says in their document which they released, are yet to collect their permanent voter cards. Well, yes, although this is the representation in percentages of the distribution of the permanent voter cards. 75.94% of people have collected their permanent voter cards, while 24.6% are yet to collect their permanent voter cards. And so INEC say they'd like to achieve at least 85% of the distribution figure before the elections, before the 8th of March, which happens to be the deadline day for all of those. But while the chairman of the commission appeared before the Senate and spoke today, he spoke for a while, spoke for a number of things. You should have, if you watched it live, you would remember that there were so many things which you highlighted. But we just sought here to highlight some of the things that he said, even though various other reports will tell you more. 503 cards failed to work. It was like him saying they were dead on arrival. But I think he said it was about 0.03 or 0.09% of the cards that were received, and that's appreciable. That's within the safe zone, the chairman says. But then, 1 million permanent voter cards are yet to be printed. So who knows how they'll eventually go about all of those details. But then, the chairman also said today that people continue to snatch, steal permanent voter cards as though they're going to use them. But he says they seem to forget one thing. You can't use them even if you steal, snatch, or whatever you do with them. 300 today in Ebonyi State, the chairman says, were stolen. 300 of those in Ebonyi State, but he says he's sorry to disappoint them. It's futile, unless, of course, they've got ulterior motive for all of those. And then for those cards that have not been printed, he said at this time, it's rather too late in the day for them to go ahead and print those cards. And so if they're able to achieve 85% without that 1 billion, it may just happen to be good to go, because he goes back comparing data, the previous elections, even this year or late last year, 2 elections that held, those scenarios, those figures, he says, could also be coming in handy. But for those who complained about configuration of the permanent voter cards to polling units and all of those time wasting, he then says it takes about 30 to 60 seconds to configure the permanent voter cards to a polling unit. And so you don't have too much to worry. Yes, they also did raise the view that you may have some polling units that have about 6,000 people there. Will they have any cause to worry? But he says no, there shouldn't be from the tests they've conducted. But yes, he says they may just have to do more field tests. But the tests, the simulations they've conducted so far, all the tests, they are looking good, the commission says. And then about the PVCs, continuing with the PVCs, the technology of the PVCs is based on the GSM technology. He says, yes, of course we know how the services are in the country. Almost everywhere, if not everywhere, you can access your phones, you can make calls, you could have connection. And so they don't expect to have any hitch. They're working with all the telecommunication networks in the country. They expect to have a smooth sail, the chairman of the commission told the Senate today about all of those. But then, in case they get to any center and those cards are not, or the card readers don't read them, remember he says the cards or the chances that they won't read them highly negligible. But he says at the moment, it's just about 15% of the incident forms is what was distributed in the country, because over 90% of the card readers, I beg your pardon, 90% of the cards that came into the country, they've tested, it works, so they don't anticipate any problem. And that's why it was just about 90%, beyond this 15%. Now, 90% of those cards have worked, and so they don't see any reason why they should deploy more of those incident forms. The incident forms can be used if the cards don't get read by the readers, and so it could also add to the number of those who have been accredited, the chairman of the commission also says. Let's flip to the next slide that should pop up on your screen now. And the next slide talks about the card readers. A lot of commentary making the rounds now about the card readers. The chairman even says, yes, there are those who don't want the card readers to be used, but in the meantime, as it stands today, they've got no choice. They have to use the card readers. If you have the permanent voter cards, the card readers have got to read them to, of course, lend credence to the integrity of the entire process. So he says there will be 1 card reader per polling unit. If any of those ad hoc staff don't use it, it's an offense, the chairman says. So that's trying to underscore the importance and why they should use the card readers. And for those who are worried that how will these card readers work? How will they send information to the server? Will that happen in good time? But it says, yes, it saves information and then sends it to the server. If it fails to work, don't forget, the incident forms are on standby. So from his presentation today, it does appear they've got every ground covered and that these elections can indeed hold. Well, yes, we'll bring some other materials to you, which the chairman spoke about while the discussion goes on. But perhaps we should even take you through, let's hear some other things that the chairman of the commission said today before the Senate.
What if a person is verified, but his fingerprint cannot be authenticated? We have worked together with all registered political parties and agreed on what to do if any of these has arisen. In the highly unlikely event that a card reader fails, we have enough spares to deploy before the end of the accreditation at 1 p.m. and then adjust the time to gain for lost time where or if a card reader has failed. If we cannot replace before the end of accreditation, then the election in that particular voting point would be postponed to the following day when a new card reader will be provided for the election. And we agreed with political parties to do this because if you say if a card reader fails, then revert to manual, we are worried that then everywhere it will revert to manual because there are many people who don't want the card reader to be used. If a voter's permanent voter's card has been read and his or her details have been verified, but his fingerprints cannot be authenticated, or he or she has no fingers, an incidence form would be written by the presiding officer of the voting point, and the voter would then be accredited. Party agents and observers will be there to testify to this. In the next few weeks, the Commission hopes to utilize, as I mentioned earlier on, the 6 weeks period of extension to organize more extensive public enlightenment and testing of the card readers. But we've already done a number of tests.
Chairman of the Independent National Electoral Commission, Professor Attahiru Jega, speaking today before the Senate. Well, we'll just go over and get seated and get ready to go on today. Good evening, Alhaji. Thank you for coming on today.
Good evening, Chairman.
All right, well, we'll come in and get your views in just a moment, but just give us a moment. We'll be back after the break.